So back in March 1994, there was this drug dealer called Leroy Smith. He was confronted by two policemen. He thought they were going to search him. They asked to search him. It was near the Atlantic pub in Brixton. His way of dealing with that was to fire three shots. He shot James Seymour in the back, and his colleague, Simon Carroll, he shot him in the leg. So Leroy was sentenced to 25 years in prison. And encouraged by his then partner, he wrote about the incident and wrote a book. In turn, PC Seymour read the book and decided to contact Leroy. What happened after that is remarkable, and I'm very pleased to say that both Leroy Smith, who wrote the book Out of the Box, and PC James Seymour join me now. Leroy and James, thank you so much for joining me. It is a very unusual story. So if I can start with you, Leroy, take us back to 1994 and that fateful moment where, if I can put it that way, that you and James met.
Yeah, hi Trisha. Yeah, back in 1994, I was a aggressive, vicious young man who was dealing with crime for a living, and I got cornered in Brixton by James and his colleague, and I was more interested in trying to escape and not go to prison. I had a firearm on me and drugs, and I fought to try and flee. So basically, I shot both officers and then used the gun on my co-defendant to make him get us to escape on the back of not wanting to go to prison, and that's what happened. It was like, when I look back at it now, I can't even believe that I did it, because I've changed so much since.
Yeah.
But that's what happened.
Yeah,
yeah.
We'll talk about that. For you on your side, James, so can you tell us about that moment that you met Leroy? I mean, I'm guessing you wanted to search him. What happened?
We had more than enough evidence for a search, so that's what we intended to do. And we started off textbook style, like separating Leroy and his co-defendant. I went to search his co-defendant, who dropped something on the floor that I thought was crack. And as I went to push him away, I went to hold him, push him against the wall to gather the evidence, I saw Leroy struggling with my colleague, who nearly had the better of Leroy. And then I saw Leroy pull a handgun out of his waistband, which hit Simon in the leg, and fired and broke his leg. Leroy then told me to disappear, and literally it's one of those things, everything starts happening in slow motion. You know, you're not believing this, it's a nightmare, it's not really happening. And I literally, just as I turned, you know, you've got a colleague that's screaming in pain, and you're literally helpless, you've got nothing. You know, I wasn't armed or anything. And then Leroy fired another shot, which hit me in the back. And that was it.
What was that like? Did you know you'd been shot?
Yes, I did. Yeah. Obviously, the pain is quite intense, and obviously, I heard gunfire as well, and instant pain.
Yeah. And then what happened to you, James? I mean, when you must have been hospitalised for, I don't know, how long did it take you to get back on your feet?
I was in hospital for 4 days, and then I had to visit for another 2 weeks every day, because there's a shortage of hospital beds in those days. Whereas my colleague was in hospital for 3 weeks before he did further rehab.
How did you feel about the man who'd shot you? I mean, at that stage, when you were going through that, when you were feeling all that pain, was it anger? Was it hatred? Was it, you know, that you should have done something differently? What?
I think you feel a bit of helplessness, and sometimes guilt, because, you know, could I have done more? I always ask myself, done more to help Simon? Could I have dealt with the incident differently? But in reality, you know, you couldn't, because you're helpless. you know, against a firearm. You know, if it's a knife, if you've got distance, you've got some safety. If you've got distance with a knife, with a gun, you haven't. But I had no hatred. I've never hated Leroy. You know, I was in the wrong place at the wrong time, or the right place at the right time with being a police officer. So it wasn't personal.
Yeah.
You know,
you knew it wasn't personal. Yeah, let's come back. Let me come back to Leroy. So you take off with your co-defendant. Obviously, the police caught up with you, I'm guessing, eventually. Did you feel bad about shooting them? I mean, how did you feel? Did you think, oh, my God, I can't believe I did that, or they deserved it, or what?
To be honest, at that stage of my life, I was a serious criminal dealing with high-grade crime every single day, and I didn't even think about it, to be honest. It was another day, a big day, but another day of days what all the other days weren't as big because it wasn't police officers, but other people was getting the wrong end of that gun. And that's what I was doing for it. So I was desensitized to it at that stage.
So when you actually got caught, how did that happen?
I fled to America, and then I was over there for a while, and then I got arrested by the FBI SWAT team, and I was put on remand.
Okay.
And then they brought me back to England after a while, and then I stood trial at the Old Bailey.
And how many years were you sentenced to?
Right, so I did, I got 25 years, and I was supposed to serve 18 years, 8 months out of it, but I served 17 years, 3 months.
And was prison somewhere that you fit in, felt comfortable? I mean, what happened to you in prison?
In prison, because of my crime, I was a Category A prisoner. So that means at that time it was the IRA and all the other people is a threat to the state or to society in a big way. And it's called a high security prisons, like a state. So it's 4 prisons, and you just go round and round in them 4. And everybody ends up knowing everybody because you're all there for a very long time. And it's like a world was in virtual reality because everything's upside down. Bad things are good and good things are bad, if you understand what I mean. And you don't.
Yeah. You must have been at the top of the tree then for what you did.
I could interact with everybody on any charge in the prison. For that means you could be in there for a ton of coke, or you could be in there for terrorism. I could interact with anybody because of my charges. Yeah, that's how it is in high security. Unfortunately.
But did you ever think of James and Simon? Did you ever think of them at all, or were they just casualties in a long list of casualties?
Casualties in a long list of casualties, to be honest. That place.
But now you.
So
sorry, I was going to say you were. Yeah, go on. Sorry, I beg your pardon. Go on.
In that place, it's very violent. So when you're in there, you're mostly thinking to live day to day and survive that place and come out alive more than anything else.
And for you, James, did you follow Leroy's case? Did you know he'd been sentenced, that he'd gone to jail, or did you sort of just not forget about him because you couldn't forget about being shot? I mean, there must have been a certain amount of trauma just from the memories of that night. Was it something that you put to one side or something that you thought about?
No, I mean, obviously I was at the court case and I was there when Leroy got sentenced. So I knew he was going away for a long time, which gave me a little bit of peace of mind. And we've discussed it together. It's what I felt he deserved. I didn't think he would serve as long as he did. And that was one reason that led to my forgiveness, one reason, because he served a lot more than half his sentence. It wasn't just that, it was also the other reason.
Sorry, so that moment you're both in court, I'm guessing, and you look at each other, What were your thoughts, Leroy, when you see this one casualty in a long list of casualties, but there he is in court? And the same for you. You know, James, you're actually looking at Leroy. Did you see him in a different light from that, you know, that first awful encounter?
I was still being,
yeah.
I was still being nasty. So when I was at court and I got the sentence, I was pointing the gun fingers at them and all this stuff and just being nasty. I weren't thinking nothing nice, and I was thinking like, forever, because I'm 25 and I'm.
And what about for you? Yeah, that's it. My life's over. What about you, James? Did you, when you looked at Leroy, did you see a vicious, angry man, or did you see something else, or what?
No, just obviously I found when he pointed a made gun at us and fire again, I found that very insulting and it wasn't necessary. But obviously over the years, I've looked back and realised, as Leroy says, he was only 25. He was a bad man. And so, I was, I found it quite disturbing. But as time goes on, I've learned to look at the whole incident in a different way.
Yeah. And let's talk about what triggered, and that's a really bad word to use, but what started that, Leroy? Your I mean, there's sometimes laughter in the darkest of moments, isn't there? But what started for you, Leroy? Somebody suggested you write about your What were you writing about exactly, though? Because if you were still the big man and the tough man, was it a book of bravado, or was it a book of regret, or was it the real story of who you were and how you were brought up to be this bad man? What was it?
So basically, when my mum got murdered when I was 2, so I had a kind of bad start from the beginning, and then I've gone through this experience and met all these different people in high security and learned all these different things and had a better understanding of life. And then I've come out with a reverse now, because now I'm scared about the police, because I know I shot 2 police officers, and now I'm not a gangster anymore. I'm an old man and I'm coming out to society. So I'm the vulnerable one. And then I felt bad about all the bad things what I did to so much different people. And I thought to myself, if I write...
And let me jump in there, Leroy. Leroy, what made you feel bad? How do you go from somebody who was making gun signs at the person that you shot to realising you're a bad guy? What made you see that?
I did the best part of 20 years behind the door, looking at a ceiling. That's a long time to reflect. And then when you come out, it's gone from what you knew as society to bendy buses and supermarkets where the machine's talking to you, and Oyster card and all of this different stuff. It will make your head spin, and you'll realise that how you wasted life and all of what you did never made no sense. You understand? And then things start, when you understand now that you have to make a life for yourself and you've got to be able to live out here and everything costs money and this, that and the other. And then I was around a very beautiful person, and they was like a middle class person, and they took me, they basically took me on properly, to the extent where it was my partner, but she was schooling me at the same time, and she was covering for me financially. And she said, look, you can't just be there, like you need to, when I bring you places, I have to be able to say who you are or what you are, like what are you? And I thought about that, and the best thing I could do in my life at that stage, I thought, was to write a book and be honest, and then hopefully it can help some young people, because they'll be able to relate to a lot of stuff in there, and then they might not go down that road to end up in my situation. So then that's what was the desire to write the book. So when I wrote, it was there's not one lie in that book. It's a serious book. That's why people read it all in one go. And it's like, all the reviews like are amazing and everything. So that's the inspiration behind it.
It's really you. What I want to do is after the break, I want to pick up this story from James, you finding that book, reading that book, and what happened. Welcome back to the remarkable story of how former gangster Leroy Smith shot and injured one of two policemen, PC James Seymour, did time in prison for it. And we've just got to the point where, Leroy, you were saying that you wrote this book about who you were and what had happened, because you'd had all of those years to reflect on the person that you become. Meanwhile, James, you find this book and you read it. What were your thoughts reading this book? I'm guessing you were attracted to read it in the first place because you thought, oh, hey, that's the guy who shot me.
I always, I say I never hated Leroy. And after it happened, there's one day I thought I wanted to meet him to see if he really was as ruthless, you know, as he was made out to be, and he was at that time. So I just wanted to see what it's like years later. So I read the book, and the thing I liked about it was honest and open. And then I found out that Leroy...
Can I jump in there? What was it about? Which bit about it? Was there a bit in that book that really impacted you and almost made a light go on, and you thought, okay, that's not the reason why, but now I'm starting to understand this person more?
Yeah, I think the first bit, as Leroy said, his mother was murdered when he was 2. I can't imagine what that's like. And just the area where he's brought up, and just the opportunity in life, didn't have it, or very reduced opportunity compared to what I had myself. And I just started to look at it from Leroy's point of view. Put yourself in his shoes, and what would you have done? You know, I'm talking years down the line after this happened. And then when I read the book, I thought, you know, if he really does genuinely want to turn his life around, then what better moral support to have than one of his victims? And I looked at it as well, is that Leroy had the means, the time, the opportunity to kill both himself and Simon. And he didn't. So for me, he's not a cop killer. He had to shoot to stop us. And now I've looked back and I think, you know, I can accept the reasons why he shot us. Yeah, and to be honest, I've looked at it another point of view is I'm lucky I'm still here. Because as I said, he could have done it. And even one bullet, because I know Leroy didn't know where it was going to go. So I just put everything into perspective and thought, yeah, something really bad has happened, but why not try and make something positive out of it that the good can only come out of? And that's where it all started, really.
So who approached who about meeting?
James sent me my IT man, and then I was scared. I was thinking, and then I spoke to my partner, and then she said she would come with me, and we agreed to meet in a train station where it's really busy, so there's lots of people, so I wouldn't be so scared. And then we met in the train station.
And what was that like, the first meeting, James?
Yeah, it was stressful. It was difficult for both of us. Neither of us knew what to expect, but we got on straight away. You know, Leroy just said he was really sorry it happened, and I just said, look, we've got to move our lives on. You know, and so that's what we did. I didn't think we'd see each other or be in touch as regular as what we have been. I thought it might just be a one-off meet, but now it's nearly every week we're in contact with each other.
And what did that do for you, Leroy? I mean, to have such forgiveness, in many ways, probably was more scary than getting a prison sentence.
Yeah, it's very humbling. And it made me know for sure that when I decided to change my whole life and the way I look at things and to go down this route of writing the book, it's just that was one thing of many was reinforced it, that it was the right thing. And when I go to schools and do talks and I look in little children's eyes and they're listening, that's another reinforcement. So everything I do, it gets reinforced, you know, that it's the right thing. And now we can join together and show people that you can overcome anything if you put your mind to it and look at things the positive way around. and who you might think is your enemy ain't really your enemy. You might be your own enemy. Do you understand? And that might be why certain things happen to you. Do you get me? So it's a
walk in somebody else's shoes. Let me come back to you, James. Though, did you have colleagues and other people saying you're mad? You know, I mean, because you know, I've got all like my production team. Everybody is listening and talking about this. Could you forgive somebody? And everybody's got a view, but they haven't walked in your shoes. Did you have people around you, colleagues, friends, family, who just said, what are you doing? You're mad, and almost telling you that you'd be right to be angry and remain angry?
Yeah, I do. I still do. I have had hate mail as well regarding it, but I just look at the positives.
Hate mail?
One or two texts and hate mail that really is quite it's quite disturbing, really. But you know. They're not worth getting upset about, because so much good has come out of it. And for me personally, I just know it's the best thing that I've done. It's just gave me a clear head on the whole incident. And like I said, if you can just get some positives out of it, which, you know, myself and Leroy have changed people's lives. You know, we can't change the world, but we can change somebody's world. And we have done that. And it's you can't describe the pleasure that you get out of that and what it means to you. And I know Leroy, you know, is exactly the same.
So what do you do together? You both go to schools together and you talk to children together?
Basically, what we do, me and James has done a thing with some LA gang members what came to England. So we done some talks and stuff with them together. And then we've done interviews on BBC and a lot of mainstream platforms to get the story out and what you know, the idea that you give someone. And then we've done restorative justice for Scotland Yard, because that's to do with in the workforce that other police officers might end up being in situations like this. So it's good to have, you know, some kind of insight.
I can see. And then I can see the amount of work that you've been doing. Yeah, go on. Sorry.
I've done talks in school because James has got a driving job. Sorry for speaking for him, but his daytime is more full than mine. So I'll end up doing things what I can do because I'm not working a 9-to-5 job. So I can do a talk in a school, and then Tesco's, we do food bank, bread Tesco's. Shout out to Trish and the guys. And basically, anything what can lead to coming in front of young people to show them a right from wrong. And I could be just going on the train and I see two, like the other day I was on a train and two kids were coming past each other on the escalator, and one was with his missus and one was alone. But as soon as they passed each other, it's like electricity went through them and they just started, and then I had to like say to him, listen, brother, he's not your enemy. You don't even know him. You understand? And I, like, the couple of seconds what I had with him changed his mindset from looking at him like that, and then he nodded and agreed and walked on where he was going. If I didn't interject that, they could have been getting it popping because they're just like conditioned. And it's like society's gone on steroids to be bad, and they don't really understand what's going to happen until they go and meet the judge. That's when they're going to understand. Yeah. And I don't want them to meet the judge. That's when they
understand. And James, for you as well, there must be other lessons too. I mean, what are the lessons that your colleagues will even listen to? I mean, are there lessons to other policemen that you can give? We've heard about Leroy talking to other young men who are kind of all fired up and are at that junction of maybe crossing a line. But what about you for colleagues? What do you say to them that could probably have as much good, to policemen? What would you say to them?
I think sometimes is that we can. I mean, I'm no longer a police officer. I'm retired now, but from being an officer, I still work for the Met, but in a training role now. But I just think that sometimes is to actually, you can always be like, look at criminals or people that commit crime as being two sides to the story, but there's a reason why these people go down that route. And just putting people in prison for me, is not the answer to make them go straight. You know, they need educating, and a lot of people that commit crime haven't had the opportunity, and it's a case of realising that. And plus the fact with you know, sometimes like, you know, assaulting police officers, just because somebody's convicted of that offence doesn't say that they're a really nasty person or even hate police. It doesn't mean that. And for me sometimes, and I've been guilty of it, is sometimes you think, yeah, because I've assaulted an officer, they, you know, they hate us and they don't like us and they're nobodies. And it's very easy to get in that frame of mind. And actually, you know, like I said before, I look at Leroy's life and I think, what would I have done? How would I have gone straight, or would I have gone the same way as him? Or maybe not as bad as Leroy, but, you know, I just look in the way that he was brought up, and I just think that, you know, difficult to do it right. And I think that's the same with a lot of.
I'd agree, there for the grace of God. Thank you both. Thank you both so much. The book is called Out of the Box, but Leroy Smith and PC James Seymour, ex-PC James Seymour, I can't thank you enough for joining me today. This is what this show is all about. It's making people think again.